Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jan Mershadams. I'm the Vice President at U.S. Development with Join Mayshad. We're an ecosystem of brands for women by women, connecting women to each other and to the companies, causes, and organizations that champion equity for women professionally and personally. Today, you're watching our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion show brought to you each and every week. Please make sure to join us at joinmayshad.com to learn about how you too can become a part of how we revolutionize how professional women connect, engage, and do business together, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today, I'm thrilled and honored to host Glen Guyton. Hi, Glen, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing? It's good to be
good.
here.
So excited to, and first of all, we've all decided that you win the award for best background ever. I love the way that this looks and feels.
Thank you so much.
Such a great way to kick off the week at the end of summer, beginning of fall. Happy September, everyone.
It's still hot here in Texas.
You know what? It's actually it's nice and sunny finally here in New York too. So excited for the continuation of the extended summer, hopefully. Glen, keynote speaker, MC, DEI expert, and owner of GuyStar Enterprises, and also you're the executive director of Mennonite Church USA. So excited to have you today. And you know what? You had me at Nirvana. As a fellow Gen Xer, I watched your video.
All right.
And loved the way that you presented as a keynote at one of the conferences you presented at, using humor and complete audience engagement and connecting with crowds in very unique and very different ways. And particularly the identity and the kind of the theme around "Come as You Are." Yeah. Talk to us about the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, I always try to have a good show with good content anytime I speak, and I was looking for a song that really just embodied the presentation. I had a multi-generational audience, and I had been listening to music for months and months, and then I listened to the lyrics of "Come as You Are," and I'm like, this is perfect as you think about diversity and inclusion, about welcoming people. I mean, that song says so much, and I didn't know that the young people were really going to connect as much as they did, but they loved it. So it was a wonderful opportunity to sing that song and share it with my audience.
Glenn, you talk a lot about the ways in which we welcome people and the importance of especially doing that right now, given the pandemic and given all the learning lessons that have surfaced from it. Talk to us about what that means to you in the sense of, welcoming and creating those environments where people do feel really valued and appreciated and trusted.
Yeah, we as we go through life, there are so many things that separate us, that divide us, and a lot of it's just unnecessary, right? Just because, Jan, you have, lovely red hair and I have none, I don't have to be put off by that, right? I can enjoy you and welcome you just as you are without being threatened that it somehow diminishes me. And I think that that's the mentality that we see in this world, even as we, I don't want to get political, but politics seeks to divide us and say, oh, well, you can't be with that camp. You have to be with that camp. This camp is going to do this to you. This camp is going to do this to you. It's enough of a world for all of us to get a little piece, right? It's enough. Jeff Bezos has a whole bunch of it. So it's enough out there for all of us. And I can be Glenn, you can be Jan, to the fullest without feeling like if you live your life, somehow I'm diminished by that.
And I think that's such an important takeaway for how we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we think about often the way in which people often fear difference and fear others who don't look like them. Right. And are you finding, particularly now because of the pandemic and because of the way in which so many inequalities have really surfaced, that we can no longer ignore what has happened and what is happening and will continue to happen? How does that factor into everything?
Yeah, well, I say that none of this is new, right? These things have been going on for years and years. As an African American male, I've heard stories from my father and listened to stories and fears that my family had of traveling to different cities, not being able to stop to go eat. And so none of these things are new, but I do think that social media And us being isolated because of COVID has just made us kind of stew into some of these things. And so it's just in our face consistently. We have to pay attention to it. We can't ignore it. And I also think there's been somewhat of a generational gap. So I'm Gen X, like you said, you're Gen X. And so if you think about the baby boomers kind of went to the end of the civil rights movement. Then when we came along with our MTV and all and the Walkman and all those things, we had a relative sense of calm because integration had kind of ended. And so we had it kind of good. And then this next generation, um, actually, I would say skip a generation, go to Gen Z, my kids, right? Our kids, Gen X kids, they were kind of like, hey, it's time out for some of these things. Now we're aware of what's going on. We heard our radical Gen X parents complaining about all these things. Now it's impacting us. So we need to go and do something. So I think some of the generational gaps has to do with it. And I think COVID, because of our isolation, we've been forced to pay attention in a different way.
And our access to social media too. And I think how we think about, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, particularly in the way in which we now really look to our peer circles and our networks on social media, and have a heavier reliance on how we're connecting with each other, not face to face necessarily, of course, because we can't all do that right now, but through social media. And I think you're right in the sense of those messages coming out even clearer and stronger because it's our primary mode of communication right now.
Yeah. And social media, really kind of curates information for you. So I think that adds to the polarization. But one of the other things is, this device right here is really the greatest change agent in the world. The camera on here is the greatest change agent in the world. If you think about back to the 60s with the Vietnam War and why that was so transformational, it was because it was one of the first wars that was actually televised. Now everything is televised. Everyone is a reporter. Everyone is a media producer, and so there's nowhere to hide. And then people are just given content that feeds their bias.
That's so true. Glenn, talk to us about how your work in the DEI space has evolved over time too. And what do you think the next evolution, what's going to be most innovative in the DEI space going forward?
Yeah, well, I've been working at this, especially anti-racism, since the late 90s. And it was kind of unpopular at the time, really a lot of resistance, especially from some traditional white circles. But now people seem to be more aware. My phone is ringing off the hook. I get emails on a regular basis. And so this is a great opportunity, if you can put it that way, for people that are working in this space, because companies are now willing to take the time to have real training. Before this, there was a lot of checkbox training. Hey, Glenn, can you come for 1 hour and talk about, diversity? And that was it. But now it's, hey, we want ongoing training. We want you to look at our programs, our policies, our systems. And so I think for the most part, people are taking it more seriously. I think people are willing to invest the resources because people see that not dealing with it is going to be a disruption. Um, and I hope too that we still pay attention to intersectionality. Right now we are really focused on African Americans, primarily probably African American men as it comes to police violence. But there's still work we have to do with women, LGBTQ people, people with a different ability, identity, and so we can't forget those uh, other groups as we work on this. But I do think the skills are transferable. So I do a lot of work with cultural competency, helping people to understand how well they deal with differences. And I think that translates well. I think my evolution has been just understanding my own bias and also being a man of power. I didn't realize how many blind spots I had when it came to how women are treated in the workplace. But I have a millennial young woman that mentors me, has given me so much insight on how women are treated in the workplace. And some things I'm like, wow, I can't believe that happened to you. So once we begin to think about intersections, then we can understand how other marginalized groups may be affected by what's going on.
Well, there's so much really good stuff in what you just said. I love the idea of mentoring up and mentoring down. And is that a trend that you see happening more and more in companies, where companies are realizing that baby boomers have a lot to mentor in the sense of millennials and Gen Zs, but then also vice versa in the sense of Gen Zs and millennials through the different ways in which they see how they participate in corporate culture.
Yeah, I don't know if it's happening as much as it should, but it's something that I preach, right? I have some baby boomers that I call when I need advice. I have millennials that I call and hire and help me with different things to help me grow and stretch me. So I say you need people that are kind of pulling you up in life, and you need people that are pushing you in life. And you should always have a mentor and a mentee as you go through life. I think that's important. And your mentees can be diverse. Uh, like I said, I have a young woman that's really helping me, that has propelled me into the speaking business. I'm a few years older than her, but hey, she gives me great advice. I have also another older gentleman who I call on a regular basis, who's kind of paved the way for me in many areas of life. I call him. So it's good to have kind of that diversity of opinion in your life. That's the whole point about diversity, equity, inclusion, right? You get all these different perspectives. It makes you more creative. It helps you to grow. It challenges you in a number of ways. And so if we limit ourselves to people that just look like us or that think like us, we don't have the opportunity to grow and prosper.
It's so true. I want to go back to what you're saying about the intersectionalities, because I think
Hmm.
that's incredibly important. And at Mayshad,
Yeah,
we talk about identity a lot, and that there's no such thing as a binary construct. And
right.
there's fluidity across gender, across race, across age, of course, across nationality, ethnicity. Um, and so I'm wondering, from your perspective, given the sense that there's so much complexity within that intersectionality, then does that dilute how we think about becoming an anti-racist? Is
Yeah, it can. And so the concept of intersectionality was kind of coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, an African American woman, because Black women have been traditionally left out of the feminist movement, and so I would have more of affinity to womanists than feminists per se. And so it's important that as we work about this justice, go about this justice work, we don't detract from the unique needs of each group. We have to be mindful of that. We don't want to get into what some call oppression Olympics, but we can't discount the unique needs of each group. And one group can't co opt all of the attention. I've actually been really thankful for the response I've seen from the LGBTQ community. I think they actually stepped back some with some of the racial injustice, and I know that's difficult. But I actually have to admire that what I've seen from the LGBTQ community, because some of these things kind of coincided with some of the Stonewall remembrance time, and so I think that sometimes when we're in these groups, like sometimes as a man, I need to step aside, right? Even as I'm a black man, but sometimes I need to step aside because there are some unique needs of women and African American women that I need to be sensitive of. And so I think that, again, we have to be able to carve out space. It is complex, but we want to navigate this in a way that's intentional, and we also want to do it with some empathy and compassion, understanding that there may be times when this group needs a little bit more attention, but each of us has unique needs, and we have to pay attention to those things.
it's interesting. I think that too, the importance of the personal narrative, your own personal story, really
Yeah.
adds a lot of nuance and a lot of just richness
Mhm.
and to the fabric of who you are. And we talk a lot with our Mayshad ecosystem of many women in our network, as women do. We reinvent, we pivot, we change, we reinvent, we pivot, we change.
Yeah.
And as we see in 2007, 2008, that happened a lot with the market crash, and
Yeah. Yeah.
reinvented, right? Particularly a lot of Gen Xers reinvented. And
Yep.
now during COVID, with the millions and millions and millions of unemployed Americans, like we're seeing that come to fruition again.
Mhm.
And thinking through, what does that mean then for, for how we think about what comes next,
Yeah.
and the richness of our own personal individual stories, and the importance of telling your backstory,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
then gets you to where you are today, right? And sometimes we forget about the richnesses of our backstory because we're so focused on the present, so focused on the future.
Right. Yeah. You can't discount the past, and I think it's helpful too, because this is not the first time that we've had something like this happen in the world. Of course, for us it's immediate. we're adults now. You know, some of these things seem like ancient history, but the same thing, similar things happened, you know, back in the early 1900s. You had a pandemic then. You also had the Great Depression of the 30s, and people survived. I'm actually reading some books from people that came through there. So I look at this as an opportunity to grow, to take advantage of the space that's available now. I mean, more space is available, different spaces are available. So you do have to think about reinventing yourself. Not saying that you won't have some pain. I'm fortunate and privileged enough to be able to take advantage of these opportunities, but I've been working at it for a while, but new doors are opening. And so we can't, yeah, we don't want to discount the past. And we also have to, you know, be considerate of people as they move forward. But this is going to pass. You know, we have to do some intentional work to get through it. So I would say to everybody, you know, what's changed in your life? You know, sit down, write it down. What's changed? Where do you want to go? What are the opportunities for you in this moment? Because the world has changed, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I see families are more united. Um, Again, there's space for new stuff to happen in this environment.
I think the historical context is so incredibly important because I
Oh
think
yeah,
that in the way in which we all live now, yes, this is horrific.
yeah.
And all of us know, family members and colleagues and friends who have gotten sick. Many of us know people who have died from COVID.
Hmm.
But this is a blip in history. It's a blip in our radar.
Yeah,
And I appreciate the fact of what you're saying about the historical perspective on it, to understand that people did survive in the past when things like this have happened.
yeah.
And I'm wondering if we also right now have such a short attention span
Mm,
to be able to keep that historical framework in perspective.
yeah. Yeah, you know, I can't remember the person that said it, but they said that where there's a wealth of knowledge, there's a poverty of attention, and that's exactly where we are today. I even say some of the young people that are out there, God bless them, that are out there protesting. I say some of them have uh, activism ADD. You know, they move from one movement to the other. Social media is great for bringing a crowd together, getting people excited, but to change systems, it takes time. If you think about the work of Dr. King, you know, the bus boycotts, uh, the sanitation worker strike. If you go to Gandhi, the Salt March, these things took a long time, months, years. You think about the Delano grape strike with some of the farm workers, years and years, and they were very specific. You know, I see the Facebook activists and the Twitter activists. Hey, we're boycotting Chick-fil-A tomorrow. Hey, we're boycotting Target tomorrow. I'm like, Target doesn't care if you boycott it for one day. If you want to make changes, sustain action, and it's going to cost you something. And so we have to have a historical perspective. We got to understand, you know, the social media has its power, but how do we bring about lasting systemic change? It just takes something else other than just, you know, a tweet.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we first started the pandemic, we had someone who's involved in New York City
Uh,
politics on, and we asked her the question, what do you think we're going to learn from this? And she said, unfortunately, I'm not sure we're going to learn enough.
oh wow, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that's, but and to her fairness, that's when we thought we were all going back to normal in September,
yeah,
and now nothing's back to normal in September. So we're now in this evolved kind of new state of things.
we're never going back to normal. We're not going back to 2019. You can just hang that up.
No,
Yeah,
no.
which is good though. I think it's good.
I think it is good. I mean, look, like many things weren't working, and I think we all have a tendency to romanticize the past.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
For sure. I want to go back to something we were talking about, just in the sense of kind of the dilution of terminology and of phrases. And
Hmm.
now we hear a lot of people and terminology within the corporate setting where words like authenticity
Hmm.
and fairness and trust and safe spaces
Yeah, yeah,
and empathy are used so often.
yeah.
And we know that they're coming from a good place, but then how do we
Maybe.
ensure, maybe not, how do we ensure for those of us who are truly authentically in this space that we're not just moving toward a whole different sort of 2.0 version of checking things off a list?
Yeah, yeah. Like we early on in this we may have different opinions about this, but early on, after the George Floyd incident, we fixed everything. We fixed breakfast. Breakfast is the least racist thing uh, going on now. We don't fix pancakes. We fix syrup. We fixed Uncle Ben's rice. But are we fixing the systemic things that actually impact my ability to live my life as a person of color, or your ability as a woman to have equal pay, equal opportunity? So that's what we need to think about. What are the results of what's going on? What is the actual systemic change? Nobody cares about nice. I don't care if you change the name of the master bedroom to the owner suite. That's absolutely ridiculous to me that we even spending time on that. If I own a house, I have some power. If I own land, I have some power. That's what I need to be celebrating. And so we need to look at the systems. Is it infringing on our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? Those are the three things that I share with my clients. So life is, am I able to live my life, like can I go out and live my life without fear of dying to be able to accomplish my goals? Can I do that? Uh, the pursuit of happiness. Do I have a chance to elevate myself in life? Liberty. Do I have the freedom to get to the things that I need to make my life better? So we need to think about that as we start thinking about changes in corporate America or whatever organization we work with. Do I have equal access? Do I have equal opportunity? Can I elevate myself at the same rate as other people? Are there barriers that prevent me from getting the tools and things that I need? And so, I mean, some of these things are nice, right? I mean, I'm not like a big fan of Aunt Jemima or whatever, but that's not the priority on my list of changing, the picture on the pancake mix. What would really have been changed if they had given the family some of that generational wealth tied to all those pancakes. And so we want to make sure we challenge our organizations to say what is real change. So we have to listen to our employees, and there needs to be some change in the way we operate. The culture has to change. The way we do things around here is culture, right? So the way we do things around here, wherever here is for you, needs to change. And there should be some type of sacrifice or a reallocation of resources, whether that's people resources, financial resources, something tangible that you can get your hand on. Empathy is good, right? We do need to be empathetic. A lack of empathy does lead to other problems. I can't necessarily measure empathy per se, but I can measure promotions. I can measure how much money is in my paycheck. I can measure ratios and percentages in the organization. So you need hard results to go along with some of the goodwill things that organizations are working on. And I don't, and for the record, I don't believe in safe spaces because I believe, we're accountable for all the words that we say. And if once it comes out of our mouth, someone can use that against us. So I do believe in brave spaces where you are willing to take the risk to speak up.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to actually continue that thought on safe spaces.
Okay.
And that's being used a lot right now, particularly as it pertains to physical safety.
Oh yeah, yeah.
People in the workplace, but then
Mm-hmm.
also maintaining physical safety within the home too, because what
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing now is incredible increasing rates of domestic
Yeah.
violence in the home, right? And so
Yeah.
there are dangers with people, perceived dangers of people going back into the workplace, right,
Mm-hmm.
associated particularly with COVID and how to protect employees as a part of this new corporate culture
Yeah.
and embracing that. But then also within the home, it's not necessarily always a safe space either,
Yeah.
as we think about safe, right?
No, it's yes, not that, and that's so. I do believe that we have a right to have physical. Again, that's life, and we have a right to live our lives and be safe in that sense. And I just watched a news story yesterday. So like homicides are up, but actually like crime is down. But I think that since we're on top of each other, so people that live in poverty, people that have the stress of are they going to be able to make it? So those systemic problems are more prone to I guess these violent interactions. And so again, that's when some of the systemic changes are necessary as we think about people having access to food, education. Is tough, and so that's where if we are in a position of privilege to help people, that's where empathy and things can come into play. But also providing resources. We can go check on people, we can call people, We can encourage our government officials to create systems that do check on and monitor what's going on. So those are real substantive changes that can happen. And if we have friends with some of my employees, I said, hey, if you need counseling, we have our employee assistance program. Companies, if you're a CEO, I would say, hey, promote that. Those are things that you pay for that are part of many of your benefit packages. Promote that. Uh, Telling people to, hey, take time off, take vacation. Yeah, even though you're working at home, you probably need vacation more than ever. And so as leaders, we have to be sensitive to that. As members of the community, hopefully people do have those connections uh, where they can find a place to be safe. Sadly, some people don't have that.
I want to go back to the word power, which you've used a few times in our
Yeah.
conversation. It's something that actually we taped a Women in Money show earlier today, and we used that word a lot too, in the sense of women stepping into their power
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that while traditionally it was a very masculine word with a lot of masculine connotation, that we're in a different place now where power can be interpreted in many different ways and claimed in many different ways.
Oh yeah.
Historically, we often associate power, of course, with the right to own. Right to own people, right to own property, right to access to capital. And that's, of course, evolved over time. But here we are in a world that's still, we're a capitalistic society. And so we still value and prioritize money. But yet with COVID, the way that which we spend money has changed dramatically. We're not spending money in the same way, or at least on the same types of things. And so wondering if there's a different sort of currency that we think about as we move forward into whatever this new world is, or from your perspective, is money still going to ensure that as the good people that we are, they're actually doing good with money as a source of power?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I have this debate with friends of mine. I do think in America, money does carry with it a certain amount of power. How we use that, but then you think about people like Gandhi and Mother Teresa. They probably had access to money, but they also had a great deal of power in the work that they do. The greatest power we have is the power of our mind. Is our faith, whatever your faith is, just that belief that you can. That's the starting point, I think, for all of us, is figured out what is it that you are called to do. What is your purpose? Write that down. This is what I'm going to do, and then you set your mind to say, I'm going to accomplish that no matter what. No one can take that power away from you. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but no one can take that power away from you. That power of belief, that drive that you have in yourself, and of course, then you say, well, what are the things that I need to get that? It may be money, it may be powerful people. I have a little thing I recite to myself. It does involve money, but it also involves people uh, providing for me. Whether it's knowledge, whether it's opportunity. People can open those doors, and that gives you a sense of power. And so, depending on where you work and how that's leveraged, I always encourage people to lead based on who you are. I don't think we should really. You have to make compromise. You have to make compromise when you work. It can't always be your way, but never compromise who you are. Never compromise your integrity for any job, any position. That gives you an unbelievable amount of power. Be you when you are leading, because then you know that you're responsible for what happens. Nobody else can do anything to you. If you get fired, that's okay. You got fired because you were authentically yourself. And I don't mean that in a hokey way, but Glenn has lived his life a certain way. Glenn has had certain experiences. Glenn's parents poured certain things into his life. Jan's parents poured certain things into her life. So I can't be Jan, and Jan can't be Glenn. So I would never tell Jan to try to be the best Glenn she could be, and Jan should never tell Glenn to be the best Jan he could be. No, be the best Jan or Glenn that you can be, whoever you're called to be, and that will give you so much power and so much peace in your life that then you will be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve in life.
Come as you are.
That's right. Come as you are. That's right. Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about unearned privilege
Yeah.
and the importance of understanding and being able to empathize and sympathize with others whose,
Mhm.
exactly to your point, whose differences, whose experiences professional and personal may be completely different than yours. And where does unearned privilege fall into this
Yeah.
conversation? And what responsibilities do companies have, as for those of us who are leaders within companies, for helping employees understand how they show up even before they show up at a company, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So who really has earned any privilege, right? That's the question. Because everybody gets all mad when you start talking about white privilege and these other things. I'm like, yeah, well, I work hard. Well, everybody pretty much works relatively hard, but who really has earned, like if you're a millionaire, did you really earn all of that, or do you just get to a point where other folks are doing things and speaking into your life? So I think we have to keep privilege in perspective, right? So some of us have more access and more opportunities than other people, and we have to be mindful of that. But we should never get so caught up in our pride of whatever identity factor we may have, whether it's whiteness or being 6'2" or whatever, that we just feel like, oh, we're just the greatest thing, and I've worked hard to earn this. Shaquille O'Neal is 7 feet tall, so he can say, well, I worked hard as a basketball player. I was a champion. Yeah, man, but you're 7 feet tall. Of course, you had to do a certain amount of work, but still, if I was 7 feet tall, I think I would be a Hall of Famer too. And so we have to keep this privilege in perspective. We have to keep this identity thing in perspective. This whole racial social construct that we have in America has really just put us at odds with one another when it's not even really, that tangible. And so let's keep privilege in perspective. And I don't know how much time we have, but let me tell you a quick story. So both of my parents grew up in Mississippi. My parents were quite a bit older than most parents. My dad was born in 1907. My mother was born in 1928. And so they had me very late in life. But both my parents grew up in Mississippi, deep South. My grandparents, both of them owned property. My paternal grandfather owned the farm. My maternal grandparents owned the house. They were able to vote. Why? Because they could pay the poll tax. They were white and black Guytons, and so the white Guytons took care of the black Guytons, and the black Guytons got a certain amount of privilege from the white Guytons. And then even my mother's side worked for the white Guytons, and so we all have all these complex things that help get us to where we are. That gives us a head start in life. So we have to be mindful of that, and we have to be acknowledged that none of us are that great. And so as we think about privilege, we want to make sure that we practice equity in the institutions. It's not about being equal, but sometimes it's equity. Sometimes we have to work harder to be more inclusive of groups that are traditionally marginalized. So I have a great story as an African American male and family, and I actually have done pretty well in life. But then I'm thinking about, okay, I had a pretty good head start other than some other black families. So does that mean I didn't work hard? No, I worked hard, but I had somewhat of a head start. And so I have to be cognizant of that, even as I think about, well, I'm black, I made it. Well, there are plenty of black people that didn't make it. And there's some systemic oppression that didn't allow that to happen. And so I have to be sensitive to that, even though I'm an African American man. Yeah, everybody didn't have the same opportunity, didn't have the same. I had a house, you know how wonderful it is to have a house and food every day, how much of a difference that can make in your life. And so as I work with other groups, they may need something extra to get to the place where I get. It's not even about being equal. Sometimes it's about being equitable. They might need an extra hand up, extra attention, a specific focus. And so that's what we have to do in the workplace as we think about this. What are our goals as we seek to be more diverse, equitable, and inclusive? And then how do we get there? That doesn't mean that we don't want to exclude other people. We're just saying, hey, we're going to pay special attention to women. We want to make sure they have opportunities. We want to make sure we have a number of qualified candidates, because if we have one woman candidate, the chances are she isn't going to get hired. But if we have two or three, then oh yeah, the opportunity is greater. Are we hiring unqualified women? No, we're just increasing the pool to be more equitable, to give that person a chance to show that they are actually qualified.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's so fascinating. And you have such an interesting professional background as well.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
love to learn about your decision in your early part of your career, to go into the military.
Oh man, to go in the military, I got to go to college for free. So I went to the United States Air Force Academy. And it was pretty prestigious at the time to be an African American person to get accepted. My father had died. Again, he was old, right? So my dad died when I was 14. It was just me and my mom. And I actually wanted to go to the University of Texas, so I sent my daughter instead. She got to go there for me. But I wanted to go to the University of Texas, couldn't afford it. Got the opportunity to go to the Air Force Academy. Some other young men at my school had went also, and I probably needed it. I probably needed that discipline at the time. There were no wars or anything going on at the time, so I wasn't like thinking I was going to go be a soldier. But it was an opportunity for me to get a good education that we could afford and help put a little maturity into this young man's life.
And Glenn, you became or have become the Mennonite Church USA's first African American leader.
Yeah, so I went from being a military guy to joining a pacifist, a peace church, a peace organization. So that's quite the contrast in my life. And so I'm a person of faith, and you never know where God's gonna lead you and what opportunities are there. But yeah, man, yeah. So I got connected to the Mennonites, and it's just like a weird journey for me. I never expected to be their first African American executive director. Um, but that's kind of the path that leadership took me. And again, one of the things I've always tried to be myself in that role. And so I guess the Mennonites knew what they were getting when they hired me. But part of my early work with the Mennonites was diversity and inclusion. I think they were actually, as far as many religious institutions, kind of on the cutting edge with some of the work that they were doing, and the analysis that they use is something that people are still using today.
Talk to us a bit about more about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, well, about the Mennonites, or about the racism thing with them.
Well, just the cutting edge research. I find that
Yeah,
to be
yeah. So
fascinating.
They had this program called Damascus Road, which basically talked about racism is about the systemic misuse of power. So that's the basis of the analysis. And so early on, we worked with many different church leaders and churches to say, hey, these are some of the problems. This is how you uh, identify a systemic abuse of power. These are the ways it manifests itself. Uh, these are this is how oppression is demonstrated in the church, and so it was very challenging for people. I think people felt like they didn't have a place to go because use that analysis. You say, well, people of color can't be racist. They can be prejudiced. They can't discriminate, but they can't be racist because they don't have the systemic power. So it helps you if you're a practitioner to say, well, it's not about you being a bad person. That's what a lot of people heard, right? You're saying I'm a bad person that I don't like black people. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that the systemic power keeps people of color from achieving, being able to fully participate, from being fully part of this institution. And so that helps kind of to frame the narrative. And this now is really helpful 20 years later that people are paying attention to it. Uh, but that analysis is very important, and the language that you use when you talk about anti-racism or any kind of oppression is very important that you use clearly defined terminology. Because if we're just saying everything is racist, it's really not, right? And sometimes I make the mistake of saying it, even that I do this professionally. Everything is not racist. Some things are just maybe racially based. They may be harmful, hateful, hurtful, but racism really has to deal with the systemic misuse of power. It's systems that keep people from, again, pursuing those things: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so it was really helpful for me to do that. And the Mennonites are a historic peace church, and so they really did some good work in that. And I'm not saying everyone just, hey, we're not racist anymore. There are still some cultural things that exist in that church, and things that I deal with, again, being um, not having that ethnic identity, because the Mennonites also have a Swiss German ethnic identity. But but I think I've done some good work with that group. Is helped me to think about diversity and inclusion in a much different way. It's helped me to think about how I utilize my power in this role as an African American, but at the same time understand there's a cultural power that still exists out there. So it's an interesting space. But that's why I always tell people, when I say, hey, be yourself as a leader, I'm someone that lives it.
It's interesting, Glenn. You spend a lot of your time interacting with public, right?
Yeah,
Interacting with people face to face,
too much.
whether
Yeah,
you're on stage or you're with your network, your congregation.
yeah.
And now it's all very different, right? And we talk often about the importance of community, and we've alluded to that here
Hmm.
incredibly well as well in our conversation. What does building community look like for you now and the work that you do, given the fact that so much of the work that you're going to be doing probably for the next year to year and a half may not be in person?
Yeah, I think I've adapted to the digital space pretty well. You do have to be intentional about it, so you can schedule like social times. I've done some social times with people in high school. I've reconnected with people that I've lost touch with. You know, and I was an empty nester, right? Like right before COVID hit, and so then everybody came back home because of COVID. So so my family unit has gotten tighter. I think that's one of the things that I value the most about it is just my family unit has gotten tighter. People are out in the neighborhood. Like I didn't really talk to any of my neighbors or really see any of my neighbors. Now we're all walking and running and doing things in the neighborhood. So I think we have to look for those kind of shining lights in the midst of this, but also just be intentional. You have to pace yourself a little bit differently, I think, because you can do get overloaded on this digital media. So just be smart about that, but take the time to engage, call people, talk to people, chat with people. I do that. People that I talk to on a regular basis, and I think that's kind of the way that I get through it. And then some of us dream like, hey, when this is over, we're gonna do this. We're gonna have a party. I have a little boat over here. I said I'm gonna go on a boat. I'm gonna rent a boat out. I'm gonna have a party with my friends. So those things kind of help me get through it also.
It's true. I love that. I love the idea of, what are you going to do the first time you can be around a group
Yeah,
of
yeah,
people?
yeah.
What is that going to look like? Glenn, speaking of the future, what, from your perspective, fast forward 2 years from now,
Uh-huh.
what will success look like for you?
Oh, success for me. Oh wow. I don't know if I want to give away all my secrets. Yeah, I don't know. No,
Give away one secret.
one secret. Success. I do think that having more opportunities to lead and train uh, in this work will be part of what success looks like for me. I have some goals that I've set out, uh, and the number of connections that I want to have. I do think there's an opportunity for me to really engage in this DEI space, and so that's what I'm looking forward to. The independence that comes along with that, opportunities, more opportunities, talking with people like yourself, and so I feel like I'm kind of on that path, that trajectory right now, and yeah, so I'm getting there. I think there are opportunities in 2020.
You mentioned Kimberly Crenshaw earlier in our
Yeah.
conversation. I love her work. Are there other scholars that you find to be really relevant in the work that you're doing right now? And recommendations for us as leaders in our own companies and our own businesses
Oh
that
yeah.
would help us get us through what's happening right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think the if you watch the Netflix 13th and now I can't think of the name. The person who wrote the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander. Her book is excellent. Um, if you read any of Napoleon Hill stuff about what was going on, man, his stuff is like really good. I'm like, man, did he write this yesterday? He wrote it like right after the Great Depression. So his books are really good to help you just as a leader have perspective. And interestingly enough, when Napoleon Hill talks about one of I think he listed like 30 things that contribute to failure. He talked about he didn't say racism, but he was like being intolerant of different people was one of the things that he listed. I was like, wow, he said that in the 30s, because he mentioned specifically race and other things. I was like, wow, this guy was ahead of his time. So yeah, that's good. I think I read A White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Some people don't like it. I thought it was interesting. I mean, it helped me understand a few things. I kind of want to read it to get a different perspective from the white culture. But if you are a student of history, if you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I always recommend people read that, and MLK. I mean, if you read MLK's book, what was going on in the '60s is exactly what's going on now. So that just shows you how these things have come full circle. We haven't learned enough. We have made some progress. I do think we have made significant progress from even the late '70s, early '80s. We made significant progress, but we need to make more progress.
What do you think MLK would say about what's happening today if he were alive?
He already said it. He said that riots are the voice of the unheard. You know, if you want to solve riots, you need to fix the systemic issues. I don't think he would be in support of violence and things like that. I think maybe some of these movements would be more organized if we had influential leaders like that today. But I do think he would have said the same things that he said. Again, it was just right on point. I've quoted him many times. He would be concerned about why some of the progressives in the church, why they're taking their stance now. Why has the church become so polarized? The same things that he wrote from the Birmingham jail, I think, are applicable now as you think about the polarizations in the religious community. So again, the young people, y'all need to, and people my age too, you just need to read some history. This is nothing new. It's not like, oh, I don't understand why these people are doing this. Hey, the same thing has been going on because we didn't learn the lessons the first time.
All right, Glenn, now it's time for our fun questions.
All
Not
right.
that all these questions have been amazingly fun, I think, but
Okay.
here's your first one. Describe 2020 in 1 or 2 words.
2020. I'm going to say sacrificial opportunity.
Ooh, that's good. I
Yeah,
like that combination.
yeah. Sacrificial opportunity.
What advice would you give your 85-year-old self?
My 85-year-old self, save money and retire earlier and go to Hawaii more often. Go to Hawaii more. That's on my list. Let's go back to the success question. Hawaii. I want to take an annual trip to Hawaii. I went with my son. My wife was a little mad because I didn't take her, but she was working. So me and my son went to Hawaii. It was so wonderful. That was my second time, his first time, but it was just so peaceful.
No, I think there's research, right, that indicates that the importance of being on a beach and being along the water and being along the beach in an ocean and the creativity that spurs. There's actually
Really?
there's scientific evidence that proves that you become much more creative when you're on a beach or next to ocean water. So that
Okay,
justifies
I like
any
that.
vacation, I think.
I like that. I like that. Okay. Work
All right,
requirement.
next question. You can have dinner with 3 other people who are deceased. Who would you want to have dinner
Oh,
with?
the three to see. Oh, well, I think Martin Luther King would be one. Uh, Man, or Napoleon Hill. Now that I'm reading all his books, that would be a really good one. And man, the Jesus too easy. Of course, I would Jesus, because that would just answer all my questions, right? But I won't say Jesus. Uh, I would want to talk to somebody like Shaka Zulu. Somebody like from Africa that had underwent all of the like the colonization and things like that. I think he would be an interesting character. Like, hey, why did you do this? How did you organize all these different groups?
Final question for you,
Okay.
Glenn. Okay, so you're Gen Z. I'm a Gen Z. We are
No,
the
I'm X.
forgotten generation.
I'm
Or
X.
Gen X. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, oh my God, I forgot.
Yeah, yeah.
I forgot what we were. Gen
Yeah,
X. See, we're the forgotten generation. I forgot what we were.
yeah, yeah. That's because we're so little. That's so small. Smaller generation.
So, so we're often forgotten about
Yep.
in research and literature and how companies think about innovation or building culture, and marketers forget about us too.
Yep.
So but many of us have many more years in our professions as we think about like what does the next iteration of our career look like
Yeah.
between now and the time that we retire and all go to Hawaii together.
Yes.
What advice do you have for Gen Xers who are at the height of their career or really thinking about pivoting and reinventing and staying fresh, relevant, and current during this really crazy time?
Yeah, I think we just need to operate that in that middle space. This and we should always kind of operate as Gen Z in the middle space. So right now we have been the gap between the baby boomers and the millennials. So now once the boomers go away, now we need to be friends with the Z's and kind of get them on our side. I mean, I know I'm trying to be a funny. We need to get them on our side because I think they have something really good to offer. We just need to chill as Gen Xers. We're the latchkey kids. We know how to just kind of be independent. I think we do our best work when we just kind of guide and kind of push kind of things around and move things around to keep things more harmonious. We know when to stir up trouble. We know when to keep bringing in some harmony. I think that's the best way. Just stay low key, Gen X. That's okay. They may forget about us, but we're here in full force.
I love that. Glenn, how do our viewers stay in contact with you?
Hey, I make it really easy. Glen Guyton. So website glenguyton.com, social media at Glen Guyton, no matter what channel we're on. Follow me on LinkedIn or Oh yeah, what's Instagram on the gram? Follow me on the gram. Really good information. But glenguyton.com is so easy to find me. Check out my website.
Thank you, Glenn. It's been an absolute sheer pleasure and joy having you on our show
All
today.
right.
And we'd love to invite you back because, we're in this new world, this new normal together. And as we really need to be able to figure out how to create ecosystems and communities that really support and embrace
Okay.
the principles that make us who we are. Thank
Yeah,
you
yeah.
for showing up and being with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm Gen Xers, the Vice President of U.S. Development with Join Mayshad. Please make sure to join us at joinmayshad.com. Join how we are revolutionizing how professional women connect, engage, and do business together. And check us out on our YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone, for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.